episode are we at now?
This is episode 7.
7, my gosh.
Oh, you're so out of touch.
It's rattling. I have not been touched by the bear. That's the problem. I need the t-shirt.
Not recently.
We're rattling through this.
Yes.
When we first said it was going to be 23 episodes, I'm not going to lie, there was an involuntary reaction to my body, and I was a little worried. But actually, I mean, we're basically halfway through. My maths isn't amazing.
Yeah, I mean, not far off. Yeah. I thought you would poo-poo the idea of 23, but you know, we're in now, so in for a penny. And all the hands. You
said 23 thinking this will sound committed of me. Right, I'm prepared to do 23 of these, Jez. That's how much I believe in it. He won't take 23. He's too busy. Let's do 23. Great idea. Damn it.
Hoisted by my own petard again.
Is hoisted and foiled the same thing?
No. Hoisted is to be lifted up.
And foiled is to be...
Foiled is a bookshop
watered.
on Charing Cross Road. Ah,
yes, it is. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes.
Highbrow joke there. Thanks.
And that coloured stuff that's wrapped around chocolates on the logo.
Alienating everyone already. Both of
us. Hey, I'm only human. Which brings us neatly to this. Matt, put us out of our misery, unless you've already seen the notes attached to the recording of this podcast. What is our theme this week?
I guess it's the opposite of putting you out of your misery. It's finding peace. See what I did there?
Well, so are we guaranteeing that people will find peace as a result of listening to this 45-minute podcast?
I am going to wager you will be at least 8.2% more peaceful by the end of this.
Or asleep, like you've been on the other one you've listened to.
Thanks for more peaceful. If anyone made it to the end of the others.
I think the whole concept of finding peace is an interesting one, because I don't think we talk about it enough yet. It's a real core need, I think, a core unmet need. So where would you like to start? Because I sort of feel that we need to start with understanding what peace is and where people sort of find peace within themselves.
I think we can take a step back, because touching on what you just said about people I think until fairly recently, think it was something to think about. Yes. I think I lived, certainly, let's rewind, say, 8 years. I think I lived life very much on fast forward, on celebrating, I'm so busy, I've got a packed diary, everything is booked for the next, no, I don't have a window, Barbara.
Yes.
And at the time, I thought that made me happy. And I think obviously a lot, and I do have quite an extrovert, I like to do stuff personality, but I also think taking a step back over the years, and also maybe just maturing and changing careers slightly and partners and things like that, I've started to realize that actually you don't have to have your foot on the pedal 120 miles an hour all day, every day, like I used to. And actually taking moments of peace and quiet and just time for yourself can be really lovely.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, that's peace as a stillness, though, isn't it?
Yes.
And peace as a in relation to pace.
Yeah.
Whereas, interestingly, my instant thought when I think about peace is more about balance and equilibrium. There's about a sort of sense of a calmness, a stillness, I suppose. Yeah. So I suppose, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying...
Are you saying Thanos was right?
Maybe I am. No. But I think it's like all of these themes, isn't it, that we explore. I guess the first thing is the caution. We should have said this right at the beginning, actually, of the series, is that you don't have to agree with everything that we say. Yeah. And I would caution anybody from throwing something out and saying, I don't agree with that, or that doesn't apply to me. Rather than throwing it out, think, okay, that's an interesting concept. How could it apply to me? Or what's my take on that? So that you don't disregard or throw something out that actually is ultimately quite valuable to discuss as being a human. And I don't think, my point of saying, actually, I instinctively think about something differently when I think about peace. It's not that one is preferable over the other, one is more right or the other, because they both are real. They're both contextualized peace. But I think if the listener is still listening, I think what they should probably think about is, what's their interpretation of peace? And so as this episode goes on and on and on and on, then they can think about, okay, well, the peace in the construct of, or the context, sorry, of what I'm thinking of it as, how do I find it, and why as well. Maybe that's what we should talk about after, is why.
I'm all for a why. Yes, and do you know what? I suspect some people might even think it might make them feel guilty to think they deserve peace or they can find something like that. Because, quiet Marley, because we're taught often that, you've got to serve other people, or especially maybe a put upon family member or someone who their self-esteem may not be as high as it could be, for example. And they might think, they're the bottom of the list, and actually looking for or finding out how they can find some kind of peace would be something they would never even consider. So allowing people that breathing space to go, know what, actually, this could be a nice thing for me.
Yeah, and I think there's something really interesting about finding peace within yourself, or being at peace with yourself, because there are a number of reasons. There might be something about you that you don't like, and finding peace with that is really important. And it could be something you've done that you're not happy with in your previous life or in your life.
Previous podcast.
Yeah. Oh, but that makes me feel sad, because he was on that Instagram that we did, and I don't think you should berate your previous podcast. I meant our last episode. The important thing you should think about, Matt, is you did your best with what you had at the time. And so, we all move on and we all get better in life, and it's okay. And I don't think he feels like he's been ditched or forgotten about.
David, because he might be listening, we're still friends. Right. We never fell out.
You were friends, yeah.
And I'm at peace with that, so shut up.
And me too. In all seriousness, I hope he forgives you. I think being at peace with yourself is really important, but also being at peace with the decisions that you make and who you are every day, I think, is really important, because a whole wave of regret and feelings of discontent and feelings of I guess imbalance happen when you're not at peace with, you make a decision, then after you think, well, was that the right thing? Am I being too harsh? Am I not? Whereas if you know yourself and you are at peace with who you are, those decisions can be made so readily and confidently because it's true to you, right? But I guess the other thing also to explore, maybe that we get chance today, is about this idea of finding peace intentionally, or a more peaceful life, or carving sort of elements of self-care, I suppose it borders into, in the environments you find yourself in, and with the people that you find yourself in as well, right?
Well, it's very good that you just said the P word just then, because I was going to pick up on something you said kind of as a joke earlier. But I think another way that we prolong discomfort is to not forgive people. Yeah. To go on like harboring resentment, to, oh, they should have done that, why didn't they do that? Or actually we don't forgive ourselves, as that, which is what you mentioned as well. But that there's that saying about having resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. You're just gonna get a dicky tummy. Yeah. And so forgiveness, which can be really tough, of course, depending on the magnitude of whatever's going on, is absolutely a key to unlocking a bit more peace in your world. Because it does, and I've been here as well with someone I'm not going to talk about, and it was really a tough time. Sure. And I never, and as much as I knew logically I should forgive them, I at the time couldn't, because I was so like, oh, I've been so wronged in this whole situation. Sure. Then time passed and I was able to do so, and also forgive myself, and also look back on my behavior and sort of analyze it in a more, I guess, mature helicopter view and say, okay, maybe I didn't actually behave as brilliantly as I thought I did back then.
Sure.
And both of those those moments have allowed me to go, okay, it happened. Next.
I think that's, how is that whole thing going with your therapist about you thinking you're a helicopter? Is that all resolving, or are you still?
That's a joke for the YouTube viewers.
And there, but for the absence of humor, was very nearly a joke. And so I think that raises a really interesting point, and that's about wanting to find peace. Because you can allow life events and allow your own way of thinking to tarnish and in fact control how you think and how you feel. And so the idea of seeking out peace, for if only for yourself, your context, your example, is a really interesting thing to consider. If you feel that because of somebody else's actions, you aren't able to be at peace with yourself or with them, but that in turn makes you feel, I don't know, angry, anxious, upset, all
of the above.
Yeah, so in a sort of retaliating sort of mood, if that's driving those sorts of behaviors and those stresses, well then maybe actually you don't necessarily have to find peace with them, but you have to find peace with yourself and say, okay, I'm going to choose to let go of that. Not for them, if you want to still have some sort of psychological sense of control and ownership of the situation or whatever, but because I want to move on and feel differently about it. So I think there's a real freeing sense of self-control, I suppose, and self-care in actively trying to find peace in a situation. And there's a third bit to this as well, because God. Point 3 of the 67-point plan on peace, without diagrams, is that I hate violence and I hate any conflict. I'm really not good at watching films. I won't watch horror or films with violence. If it's got racism in it, I tend to flick over, or I don't want to watch. I just hate conflict. I hate people being horrible to each other. It's a really uncomfortable thing for me to watch. And so there I think is I'm trying to think of how to explain this. There's the other thing is about how you use peace, how you to be at peace with yourself. And should we go to book of the week? Quickly, if I was a radio DJ, I'd be and we'll come back to this. I'm pressing the Matt Boyle's jingle button like repeatedly, and it's not coming.
Do you really want? I've got it ready. It's a wrap this week.
Oh God!
Hold on to your gusset.
Holding on.
Oh, I'm doing it. What is book of the week? This jingle is really sleek. My table is made from teak. Use olive oil if you squeak. Where's my Pulitzer?
Oh, wow.
Just drawing on life experience there.
Oh, never.
Yes?
Never have I done a project where I felt like I have a huge responsibility for those involved that I probably should have set up a supporting helpline.
You don't get that on your gardening podcast, do you? You don't get any raps on that. That's why this one's better.
Oh dear.
So my book, you still need time to recover from that. My book is called Eleanor Rigby by one of my favoritist authors ever, a Canadian man called Douglas Coupland. You might have heard of him. He wrote Generation X. That was his first novel, and of course you don't know it. He also wrote Generation A. He wrote All Families Are Psychotic, which is brilliant. He wrote J-Pod. Hey, Nostradamus. I've read everything he does. He's brilliant.
Okay.
This book is relevant to finding peace because it's about a very, very lonely, sad woman. And if I said to you, here's a book about a woman who's very sad and lonely, who gave up a child for adoption, who meets that child and he has MS and drug abuse and isn't very well, you might be like, Matt, that doesn't sound like a very peaceful book. And now you would be forgiven. But the way the story comes together, like there are flashbacks to the past, to the current, to healing, to understanding situations, and to finding peace. It really is. It just jumped out. I didn't even have to think. I knew when we knew what episode we were doing. This was what I wanted. And it links to the line in Eleanor Rigby, the song by the Beatles, all the lonely people, where do they all come from? Oh, I've just got goosebumps. You can see.
Again, you're a very goosebumpy man, aren't you?
I am. And that's her, and her email address in the book is Eleanor Rigby. Anyway, it's published by Bloomsbury in 2004, and it's just wonderful. I cry. I cry very easily at the Olympics and cat food adverts. Don't cry at books. This book made me absolutely sob.
Why cat food adverts?
Oh, it was just so emotive, and the family just loved their cat, and the cat was happy. Caveat: I was hungover and feeling tired and emotional. And that's what that will push that button. Eleanor Rigby, Douglas Coupland. Oh, wonderful. Not very long novel. You'll whiz through it. I love it.
I sort of feel that we need to go back to the cat thing. So, are you a cat person, Matt?
I love all animals. And that's not probably strictly true. I love cats and dogs.
Okay. Together?
Yeah. I want one of each, and I want the cat to ride the dog in a humorous fashion.
Whilst wearing like a little tiny cat Stetson.
Yes, of course. Then those viral millions will roll in.
You need really a cure for COVID, then your viral millions will roll in.
Oh,
hey!
Oh, God. Try the veal. He's here all hour.
I could literally talk to you for minutes. So
you want the rap again?
No, I'm gonna press my book of the week little jingle button. There we go. So I'm not sure. I've got two in front of me, and I'm not sure which one to go for the piece because what I thought is I think it's. Sometimes in order to find something that you can't necessarily explain or contextualize readily, so if it's not something that you're that you do all the time, if it's not something you're conscious of, okay, I should sort of make sure that there is an equal amount of balance of peace in my life, or I should be at peace with this thing that's challenged me or tackled me, or I want to find inner peace or whatever. I mean, you probably had this situation before where you're surrounded by people that make you feel uncomfortable. They're not your people. You know, their views are very different, their ethics are different, the morals are off the chart compared to yours, the language they use is it kind of jars, makes you feel uncomfortable.
Where do you think I'm hanging out?
Matt, we're all worried about you.
The youth club.
Down there in London, all on your own. Just you and your Pikachu dolly. So, you know, and there's a kind of a friction within you that you think, I'm not comfortable with this, and yet then you'll navigate towards people that are more your people, or when you're with your friends or whatever, or you move away from those people. I often find that at weddings. That's why I hate weddings. And it's a meaningless, inane conversation with people you don't care about whether you ever see again in your life. You have to pretend that you're interested in them for like 2 hours. It's just the most. I hate it.
Oh my God, I love weddings. That's something we need to talk about.
Funeral. So don't invite me to a bloody wedding, and I'll know you really hate me. So then I'll only ruin it for myself and everyone else there. Once when I was very young, I'm not proud to say, I got so drunk at someone's wedding, I had an asthma attack in their portable toilet. So my point is that you sometimes have that friction with the people that you're with, and so then when you find your people, or when you're back with your friends or something, there is a peace that you kind of feel at peace with being with the right people as well. So I thought for my book, maybe I should think about the alternative of being, so what if you're not peaceful, or you can't find peace. What's the alternative in order for you to be able to contextualize it? And so I chose this. It's a bit left field. It's a really cool book. It's called The Last Lecture, Lessons in Living by Randy Pausch. Now,
Randy Pouch.
Pausch.
Oh, sorry.
And Randy he passed away now, he's dead. But he was a professor at Carnegie Mellon in the States, and he's an ex-Imagineer as well. I never met him, but he very famously, you can watch his lecture online. So just to sort of put into context, when you're a professor or when you teach at university, you deliver when you leave the last lecture. And what generally happens is everybody who is in your class comes to attend the last lecture, and because it's literally the last lecture you give. And broadly what happens is that you sort of might talk about the things that you learned while you're in that post, or lessons in life you can pass on to other people because you're older, you're retiring normally. Randy's last lecture was because he had terminal cancer and he had literally just a few months left to live. And you can still watch it online, and it's one of the most, I mean, if you cry at cat adverts, you're going to be in bits at this, because at the very end, his wife comes up and she was watching in the audience, and she comes up and she gives him a big hug. And if you listen very, very carefully, there's a version that has the audio that picks her audio up, and she says something like, "Don't leave me." It's the most heart. I know, right? Boom, gotcha. So where does it go? In here, he gives all of with the context of the fact that he knows he's dying, all of the most important things that he thinks are relevant for living a meaningful life on Earth, right? So in terms of finding peace with a conflict internally or externally in your life, or what kind of finding peace is about, I was reflecting on it over lunch and thinking, well, if we don't know what it is or don't know whether it's important, perhaps actually the relevance is what's the alternative? And the alternative is that you go through life being on edge, being a bit anxious, not being comfortable, and not having that sense of balance, that sense of beautiful kind of rest where you sit within the world so perfectly, and that you've got something that you can go to find peace, whether that be running away to a forest and sitting in the middle of a forest alone, whether it be reading fiction with Pikachu, whatever it is. So that is it's called The Last Lecture, Lessons in Living by Randy Pausch, and it's published by Two Roads, or my edition is, I suspect that there's over 5 million copies that have been sold worldwide as of 2008.
Gosh. Well, so that actually sounds wonderful.
Yeah. It actually, Two Roads is an imprint of Hodder and Stoughton.
Every day's a school day. I do now.
Can we just discuss my being not at peace with my hay fever?
Oh, I know.
As I was just talking, I realized I do sound very nasally and stuffy.
You just don't sound quite like the usual 1920s throwback that you are.
Oh, you are adorable. Well, I'm sorry.
It's fine. I always sound nasal. That's what I'm at peace with. I know I am nasally of speaking, and
so you know what? Maybe in this second part, we should think about why it's important to find peace, Matt.
Yes, I would love to,
because it's one of the, when we looked at what the themes are going to be, and you text me sort of 5 minutes before we start recording and say this is the theme for this week. What is I should speak to David about whether he had these same problems. I wonder whether there is something, as if he can even bear to hear your name anymore.
Oh God, finish the sentence.
Oh, aggression. I think there is sometimes a need to think about, all of our life together. There's so many different things that plan out. There's so many things that are important. There's so many things to think about. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about who we are and how we could perhaps improve or be a better person based on our previous experiences, and think, well, reflectively, did I do that right? Could I have done that differently? Will that be better if I do that differently in the future? And that for me is, I think, what's really lovely about the Human Podcast is it's an opportunity for our listener and us just to sort of press pause and think, I'd never thought about that before, or I wonder if that will help me live my life better or think differently or whatever. And I can't imagine there'd be that many people, surely, don't call me Shirley, that have ever thought about whether peace is really a relevant topic or not. Do you think?
I would, as I proved, I was one of those people. And also, I remember trying to find peace for that situation I mentioned earlier. And there is I'm not just bringing this up for bringing it up's sake. I tried to find peace by using confirmation bias. So hanging out with friends, describing the situation and having them go, oh yeah, you're right, they're wrong. And I was like, oh, and of course, but fine, I found peace. But obviously, as you go away and you sit with it, you realize they've just told you what you want to hear. And I think that is relevant to a lot of things. Like we talked about confirmation bias before, but it's that a false sense of peace, really, of because actually it may be uncomfortable, but sometimes you don't. What you need to hear isn't what you want to hear.
Yeah. Oh, all of the time. And I, I think there's a moment in all situations where you can subconsciously choose to decide to sit on the fence and really genuinely impartially make the best decision. But I think almost all the time we slightly consciously, because I think as we're doing it, we're aware of that tiny little voice, very distant in the background, going, oh, there is another way you could look at this. But we sort of railroad that and ignore that and move on with the decision that we decided to run with, which is normally, as you quite rightly say, the one, our confirmation bias, the one that we've decided is right for us. Excuse me. But I think there's a moment in every situation where you can choose the more peaceful sort of route to take. And sometimes it's the most uncomfortable one.
Yeah.
Because it's the one that makes us hold a mirror up to ourselves and say, maybe I wasn't the best person there. Or maybe there's a different way of looking at this. Or, as you quite rightly say, let me stop kidding myself. I'm not at peace with this. And that's okay too. Like, I think this is one of the things that I forgot to mention in one of the previous episodes, is that it's okay if some of this stuff takes time. Like, there's no sort of, for very few things when it comes to behavior, is there a switch where all of a sudden you can say, okay, I'm going to discuss this thing and it's going to fix it. Oh God, I'm glad I got that off my chest. Because actually what normally happens is when you get it off your chest, that phrase is used for the release of tension, but the thing still exists. You've then got to sort of start to unpick it a bit and flatten it down, squash it, iron it all out and pop it in a box, because most things never go away. Our mind and our memories and all of the experiences that happen to us are basically like a little sort of keepsake box, and you can ignore them or you can get them out and have a look at them and inspect them again, but they're all there. It's just that some of them are sort of spilling over the edges and still clawing at us to get attention or knocking on the inside of the box, whereas others are all, nicely iron flat and we can pack them away nice and neatly and forget about them. So yeah,
and that's the thing about our bloody brains. When you say, if I say to you, think about an elephant, you think about an elephant. But if I say, don't think about an elephant, oh Christ, elephants. And so with like unresolved issues, of course we try not to think about them, but then that's whole, you need to, like, you obviously can if you distract yourself, but that whole, if I just sit quietly, I'll just be happy, and why is it gnawing at me? Like that.
Yeah. And I think there is always, for the things, the sort of greatest things that I think challenge our peace are our identity, I think, because it clearly, and I know we've spoken about identity before on the podcast, but the idea that inside there is something that is not quite right, I think that's the greatest indicator that you're not at peace with it. And so the only way you're going to be at peace with it is to get it out and to say, right, I have to address this thing in my life in order to find peace. And only when you find peace can you literally and metaphorically and probably metaphysically find peace with the very thing that you're dealing with. And it doesn't mean to say that it has to be resolved.
Nope.
You know, for example, it could have been somebody that's wronged you in the past. Well, that's happened. They've wronged you, right? Whether they apologize or not, it still happened. So it's not necessarily about changing it. It's about you deciding to really work through that. And if you can't, if you find yourself saying, no, do you know what? I want to be able to forgive them because I know that that's going to give me a great sense of power and control in order to move forward, but I still can't. That's okay too, because that's the thing. So you say, okay, well, then that's the thing we need to unpick and explore and say, okay, let me pull that apart a little bit. And you could reflect on this during a dog walk, on your commute to work, perhaps, you know, wherever your thinking space is or thinking time is. You don't have to do it all in one go. You can do it over a period of days, weeks, or months. But every time you address that, you get a tiny bit closer to finding peace with yourself and with the things that happen to you in life.
Yeah, and giving yourself the chance to understand the other person as well.
Yes,
because
if that's the context, yeah.
Yes, because we can sometimes see those events as one-dimensional. They did that, they're bad. And that completely ignores every other moment of history they've had leading up to that moment. And everyone is incredibly complex and has so many variables and stimuli and all sorts of things going on that I think it can be easy. Again, this is sort of like delaying peace, easy to demonize people as opposed to trying to understand. And this isn't just like personal relations. This can be global things going on, why events happen, why people do good and bad things.
I think we're very quick as well to judge people based on their, based on who they were, not who they are.
Yes.
And sometimes one of the most powerful ways to find peace with yourself or with somebody else is to judge yourself now and judge them now. Because crikey, can you imagine, like, if I think of all of the mistakes I've made in my life, you know, if somebody was to judge me based on everything,
of course,
you know, that's not a wonderful probably thing.
Don't get too down. Practically, and this is more in the original sense of peace that I talked about, meditation has really helped me with this finding space and breathing space in my life. And the thing is, I used to go into it going, oh, I'm going to be so calm after this. Oh, I'm going to be so zen. And it doesn't work like that. When I flipped it and just saw it as a moment of peace, and that was how I started describing it to myself, that was when it made sense. And I realized there wasn't a right or wrong way to do it. It was just me sitting down, doing nothing else for 3 minutes or at the start, for example, and building from there. And it's been really lovely.
I think, you know, there's oh God, what's that? I forget that there's like a proper word for it, but you just saying that just reminded me about challenging kind of different things about peace. One of the most beautiful things about my life is when I get to have a really hot cup of tea and there's zero noise, like utter silence. And I'm not doing anything. I'm not looking on my phone. I'm not concentrating. I'm literally just sat in total silence. Just a dog gently breathing in the background because it's Marley, probably farting, and just sipping a hot cup of tea. There's a moment of peace. And every time I get to do that, it's not every day. And actually, I could carve that every day. I could make a point of saying I'm going to have my 5 minutes. It reminds me of that elephant book, 5 Minute Peace. Now what you've done with the bloody elephants. You know that book, Just 5 Minutes Peace?
I do not.
Matt, we have covered stuff like this before. How are you? I honestly think you're just some kind of like android or something, or like if you trip over, like your arm just pops off and it's like circuits and stuff and you just screw it back in. How can you get to 55 and not have heard the book 5 Minutes Peace with the elephants and the bath time? Oh,
I don't have an answer.
I mean, look how speechless I am. This never happens. I'm going to send you a copy of 5 Minutes Peace. It's the most amazing kids book ever, and it's got elephants in it.
Wonderful. Pachyderms. Tell us about it.
Well, it's basically Mama Elephant wants a nice bath. She just wants 5 minutes peace because all the baby elephants are, Mummy can have dinner, Mummy want to play with this, and they're having to pick stuff up and blah, 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 blah. And she just wants 5 minutes peace. And every time she tries to get 5 minutes peace, they interrupt her or something happens and she has to, she just wants 5 minutes peace. It's lovely. And at the very end, I think she gets it. And then she realizes how much she misses the noise of the kids and stuff. So there's a moral lesson about not pissing off your parents. Or something, or that mums need wine. I can't quite remember what the moral of the story is, but
give your elephants up for adoption, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, pachyderms are really needy.
They should pack it in.
Yeah. Hey. Anyway, crazy stuff. I noticed you're wearing a little top there, Matt, today.
Yes, sure am.
It's old
one of my favorites. It's the bespoke human black sleeveless t-shirt, some people call it a vest, with the multicolored thumbprint logo, which I'm obsessed with.
Isn't it super silky smooth as well?
Super silky smooth.
I love the softness.
Me also. Available in different colors, different sizes, styles, cuts, different logos at, let me get this right, jezmill. No, that was putting it together. jezrose.tmill.com.
Yeah, it's in the notes and it's on our Instagram too, right? If you click on the Instagram link, does it take you to the merch store? Is that
it will by the time this is out?
Because that seems most sensible.
Yes.
And I think what we're really saying, I mean, Matt's kind of shying away from it a bit because he's, bless him, he's very humble. But I think what he's really saying is if you are listening to this or watching this and you're thinking, I need to understand the concept of peace. I want more peace in my life. I think what he's really saying is you should buy one of these t-shirts and it will bring you peace, is what he's saying.
You are shameless.
If you are sad in your life, this t-shirt will make you as peaceful and as happy. And hopefully not as snotty as me.
No. Well,
I feel like an elephant.
I feel quite peaceful, quite frankly.
Do you? Don't call me Frank. I've told you about that before. One last thing before we go. I want to challenge you on just one thing. Do you think that finding peace is important as a human being? Or do you think actually that there are other things that invariably will bring you peace vicariously rather than you actually having to specifically go out to discover and find peace?
I'm going to give you an awful diplomatic politician answer and say it is a bit of column A, a bit of column B, because I think when we talked about happiness, and I said, I don't think happiness is a goal, it's a byproduct, and I kind of think peace is a byproduct as well. Like when you talked about your 5 minutes of hot tea,
yes,
that is your moment of peace, and you found it without going, I need to find peace, I'm going to have my tea, but that just happened because it's such a beautiful thing. So that combination of doing things, actively searching for it, but I think that kind of negates the peacefulness.
Yep.
You can't go to peace classes. Well, maybe you can, I don't know, but I guess there would be meditation or yoga classes or things.
Matt, if you can go to willow basket weaving courses or other pointless things like that, I'm sure you can go to a peace class.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're Mr. Nature. What's wrong with willow basket weaving?
I have turned my back on nature after the fields today have been cut. All the wheat's been cut. It's like, it basically looks like I live in Kuwait during a sandstorm. My eyes are itching. My lungs are full of wheat.
Oh, God.
F nature, right?
F nature, pave it over.
Totally up for concrete. And I don't know, nature is way overrated. I'm going to send these 100% organic cotton shirts back and get ones made out of microplastics. That's how I feel about nature today.
Great. Wow. That sounds like some kind of peace for a lunatic.
For a lunatic? Yeah, but you're right. The reason I wanted to end on that was because, if you're left at the end of this thinking, well, I think I could identify some areas where I probably need to make peace or find peace, or maybe there are some areas I'd like to explore about whether I could be more peaceful, or I like that idea about feeling balanced, or there's the peace context of quiet and calm and tranquility, and then there's the peace context of less violence. And so what's the important angle of peace for me right now, because that will change, obviously. And it doesn't have to be the big project this week until the next episode for you to go find peace or sort of contrive, that concept of peace. It could just be that actually you find peace throughout doing other things in your life. And maybe the question you ask yourself right now is, do I feel I have enough peace or enough access to peace?
Lovely.
And if not, then that is somehow how you can go and orchestrate that to get more of it or immerse yourself more in it. Would you say that's right, Matt?
I think that's lovely. And also look for the quick wins, like your 5-minute cup of tea. Like 5 minutes of literal peace can sustain you if you've got a lot of meetings coming up. Like, I'm not kidding. Lock yourself in the toilet at work and meditate for 3 minutes.
Sure.
Do something for you. That obviously sounds a bit like the Unabomber or something, locking themselves in toilets. But
specifically a toilet.
Well, hopefully, I don't know, like a nice large disabled one that doesn't have a disabled person waiting for it. But that space. This was going so well.
So that I could just see you taking those, the toilet paper dispensers that dispense the individual sheets.
Oh, I
can just see you pulling individual ones out and laying them carefully on the floor of a large disabled toilet in a swimming pool, and then gently laying back on it so that you can do your meditation.
Safety first. I'm just saying, like in an office, you're not going to find peace, are you? Because busy.
Well, that's why I'm really pedantic now, because I used to work with somebody called Peace. So in my office, I very much would have found peace. I'm going to stand next to somebody and say, I found peace. That would make me a one.
Yes. Well, and on that 12-year-old humour, I think we should round up the episode.
Alrighty. Well, listen, if you haven't joined in the fun already on Instagram, we are at That Human Podcast, and Matt is a prolific poster that he is. So we would like to hear your thoughts this week on peace. What does peace mean to you? Where do you find it? Unintentional clap there, but aren't they all? And what is the most important source of peace for you in your life? Had to head to That Human Podcast and please let us know. Matt, where can they find more of this shenanigans?
All up wherever you wrangle podcasts. The Googles, the Amazons, the Apples, the Spotifys, and those other little ones that we on, like iHeartRadio and things like that. Podbean. If in doubt, we're there.
Yeah, and we will be here forever for you.
At least 23 episodes.
Don't forget to hit subscribe. Just give it a little rating. Just hit 5 stars. That's the easy way to do it. And say we loved it. You don't have to say you loved it. You can just type random characters in. The 5 stars are really the only important bit. If you didn't like it so much, go find a different human one and tell them, because frankly, it's free. So, Matt, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.